Today, we're showing you a lab.
In this lab, we're going to be showing you how to find the concentration of consumer-grade hydrogen peroxide.
Let's go!
So the materials we'll need are H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, KMNO4, potassium permanganate, volumetric flasks, ferrous ammonium sulfate, a scale, 2 burettes, graduated cylinder, a couple Erlenmeyer flasks, some whey boats, and lastly H2SO4, sulfuric acid.
And don't forget to wear your safety goggles.
So, first step in titration is we have to make the stock solution. So we're going to get this 250 milliliter volumetric flask and fill it about halfway with water.
The next step to making the stock solution is to weigh out the appropriate amount of potassium permanganate needed to make it. Now, our calculations have had us conclude that the appropriate amount would be 0.798 grams, so we are going to use the scale to get an accurate measurement. So we put the weigh boat into the scale, and remember to press tare so you don't accidentally include the weight of the weight boat in your calculations. Now, we measure. This seems like an appropriate amount.
Now we're going to use a funnel to get all the potassium permanganate into our volumetric flask. In order to do this, we will use a bottle of distilled water to shoot all the potassium permanganate down into the funnel. Making sure to get all the little black specks. All good. Once it's all in, swirl to dissolve.
Oh hey, so now that we've put the permanganate in the flask, we just have to fill the flask up to this line with distilled water. So once you get to the neck of the flask, you should probably slow the water flow because it'll start filling up very fast.
Next, we're going to secure our flask with a piece of paraffin. We're going to securely place this over the top of the flask. And in order to stir the solution, we're going to put our thumb on the top and flip it upside down, back over a couple times.
You gotta be sure to label your solution so you know who it belongs to and what's in it.
First step in preparing our burette is to clean it. Before you do this, make sure the stopcock is closed. Now, we can add about 5 to 10 milliliters of our stock solution. Now, what we're going to do is swirl this solution to cover the entire surface area of the interior of the burette. If you're ever putting any of your solution down the sink, make sure it goes down the drain with plenty of water. Once you have the interior filled, make sure the tip is completely filled and primed before you do the titration. Now we can fill our burette up to the top with our stock solution. Make sure you do not cross the top line.
So in order to make sure that we've achieved accurate measurements, we've got to standardize our solution. And to do that, we will use iron ammonium sulfate.
Okay, so our next step is to fill this 250 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask with about 15 milliliters of distilled water. So remember, it doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be at least close.
Now we gotta record 3 significant figures worth of ferrous ammonium sulfate, or FAS. Now I gotta pour it in to the Erlenmeyer flask.
I made a copy of it, so it's
And swirl.
Now we're going to add a few squirts of H2SO4.
So now we're going to standardize solution by titrating the FAS with the promanganate. But before we do that, we got to read the volume of the burette. So in order to read the burette, you got to read it from the top down, and you got to look at the bottom of the meniscus. So we're going from 6 down, so it looks like that's about 6.95. Now, when you're titrating, you gotta open the stopcock, and every so often you stop and swirl it around, and you'll see that the solution becomes clear again. As you get closer and closer to the equivalence point, the pink will not dissolve as quickly, and that's when you want to start slowing down. So we're not very close to the titration point. Well, now we are.
Now that we know we're close, we're going to start adding drop at a time and swirling each one of those drops. You want the color of your solution to be a butterfly pink.
Oh, we got it.
That's pretty good. Now our titration is finished, although it could be a little less pink. Don't forget to record your final volume. We're going to do this 2 more times for a total of 3 successful trials for the most accurate results.
Alright, hey guys, so for our next step for this slab is we have to use hydrogen peroxide for our actual titration. So our first step is to get a 250 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask and put another 50 milliliters of distilled water in. Doesn't have to be exact, but at least close. Alright, so we have to measure about 1.5 grams of hydrogen peroxide. So to do this, you have to open the cap and take in a squirt and carefully squirt a little bit of hydrogen peroxide until it reaches about 1.5 grams. It doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be close. Don't forget to record the mass of the hydrogen peroxide before moving on. Oh yeah, and don't forget to record your volume for your H2O2. Alright, so all you have to do now is pour this into the distilled water. Alright, so all we have to do to complete our solution is use some H2SO4, also known as sulfuric acid, and use a pipette and get a good 2 or 3 squirts, into the solution. So don't forget to fill this back up to the top. Just make sure it doesn't go above 0. It doesn't have to be perfectly the top, but it has to be close, because you're going to need most of this solution for the titration. Oh yeah, and don't forget to record the initial volume on the burette. So in this case, it's about 4.45 milliliters. So for this solution, we know that we need about 30 milliliters of stock solution. So we can go through about 25 milliliters very quickly without having to worry about it turning dark pink. So just turn the stopcock and let it run until this goes down about 25.
Yo, it's the Titration Trio, here today to tell you how we titrate. Oh yeah, these beats so hot, they call them exothermic. Now I'ma hand the mic over to my boy, cause it's time to be mad, yo.
So you don't know a solution.
Drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot.
Gonna do that titration.
Titrate it like it's hot, titrate it like it's hot, titrate it like it's
How
hot.
we gonna find that concentration?
Find it like it's hot, find it like it's hot,
Find it like it's hot. I got a beer at dropping bass, put solution in its place. Gotta make the acid weaker, cause we gotta get those A's. I'm a cam kid, we gon' titrate. See what I did there? Man, the stuff is great. Titration rap, yo. We dropping mad basses, you can do this lab if you memorize all my phrases. AP Chem got me suffering like Nietzsche. Should have taken bio admissions, aim to impeach. Now back to titration, cause this stuff's easy. Put your burette in the stand, see those numbers clearly. Add that stock solution, swirl it around to absolution. Gotta coat those edges, make it like a stock ablution. Also, you gotta make sure you run into the burette tip. Just a little tip. You're lucky we even gonna give you tips. Take a second, think about it. Matter of fact, you should probably take bio and maybe even think about taking enviro.
Oh hey, it's been a while. Now that we've used about 25 milliliters of stock solution, we should probably slow down.
Oh, that's great.
Alright, so this is just about perfect, as the lightest pink you could probably get. So all we have to do now is record our volume, which is about 34.85 milliliters. We'll be doing this titration accurately 2 more times in order to get the best results possible.